On this special episode of Wocket Launch, we discuss the new Superman film and do our best not to spoil it. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's start the show. Today I had the pleasure of speaking with Derek McCaw, an LA-based actor and writer, but you probably know him best as part of the website Fanboy Planet. We both had the opportunity to check out the new James Gunn Superman film and jumped online to discuss our reaction in a spoiler-free interview. Here is our discussion, already in progress.
When I was teaching, this was also my story about just be nice to everybody, because students would ask me, how do you know so many people, isn't it? Because I haven't died yet. And I've learned I just stay friendly with as many people as I can. And if they, to get personal, now that I've in the last couple of years gotten diagnosed with ADHD, realize there's something kind of like a friendship recency thing where you can not talk to somebody for years and come back and it's like, oh, I have not lost any time with you. My feelings about a friendship are exactly what they were when I last saw you. And yeah, in 2000, I was 35. I came to fandom really late. I was 35 years old. I was writing for a site called Daily Radar. And I pitched to them, like, if I go to Comic-Con, will you let me write articles and pay me? And they said, yeah, but we don't do comic books. So I had to focus on what movies. 2000. People don't understand this either. There were not a lot of movies at Comic-Con. It was not yet this Hollywood thing. I literally walked up to the front door of the convention center and said, I swear to you, this is my editor's phone number. It was on a piece of paper. I didn't even have a business card. I just said, here's my editor's phone number. If you call him to confirm I'm writing for Daily Radar. And they said, oh, don't worry, we won't call. You can go ahead. Go on in.
I have the same story. I walked up back then and said, I need a press pass. And they said, okay, here, sign here. And and I got it. Yeah. 12 seconds later.
We're old timers, right? So anyway, I go in there and immediately get something, the emails come in because, oh, he's suddenly on the press list. And I got invited to this press room for this indie superhero mockumentary called The Specials. The other movie being repped there was X-Men. That was it. I'm sure there were other little indie things, but those were the two. So I talked to a couple people from X-Men, but the very first person I got to talk to was James Gunn. And so for the next few years, if Roger Avery tried to claim, I shouldn't say tried to claim, it was probably true at some little point, like he'd been in talks to write and maybe direct the Dawn of the Dead remake. And so I ran that. I was a lot bigger on running rumors at that in the early days because everybody was. And when I say everybody, there were only 6 of us. It was like there weren't that many sites. And I get this phone call. And it's still, I just love it because it's suddenly, hey, Derek, James Gunn here. I'm like, what the this guy called, he said, you want me to, Roger's not doing it. I am. So you want to talk about it? And I was like, yeah. So he'd give me tips. And I'd say up until about 2007, I'd either see him at a convention or if there's something, I'd get an email from him just to check. And so I would say I had been very happy to see his career bloom and an evolution. We obviously had a rough patch around Guardians of the Galaxy 2, or because all these tweets were found. And I think people don't give enough understanding. And I don't want to sound like, I don't believe stories of people being awful. I just know that in the 2000s, if you were somebody who was in your 20s or 30s, just a few years younger than me, and you think you're working as a comedian, everybody was trying to be an edgelord. Everybody was. I don't look back at that time with pride. There are times in Fanboy Planet where I go back in articles and go, geez, that was an attitude I hate now. But everybody was doing it, right? You were trying to compete and everybody was just trying to be, how much funnier could you be? How much jerkier could you be? I would say with James Gunn, I just want to say is that he was kind when he had no need to be. And that's how I judge people now.
There's a mensch quality of when somebody's a good guy, where they're just flat out a decent person. Run the San Jose International Short Film Festival with
That's
my
right. He was a
business.
guest a few years ago. Yeah, you know him.
Yeah, we've had him there as we had the James Gunn Independent Filmmaker Award, and he handed it out to a filmmaker, and it was great. And he's so genuine, and he wants to make sure that not only you feel comfortable, but that he wants. I
Yeah.
think he's thrilled by other people's success, and that's something unique.
Absolutely. But he used to call me out on Facebook too. Hey, what's everybody reading? McCaw, your Fanboy Planet. What's a good comic right now? But I get it. He suddenly became James Gunn, and I knew this guy with the spiky hair who was the former Troma filmmaker, and that's not who he is anymore. So I mean that absolutely positively. I've been thrilled with every bit of his success. So Superman at DC Studios in general, getting him in charge was like, oh my God, yes. And Superman in specific is, I don't know if I want to say masterpiece yet, because I think I have to see it about 5 more times before I do it. But what I loved I think you went to an advanced screening as well. Or I don't know if you were one of the prime, because when I moved to LA, I lost all my press contacts as far as movies go. So I can't get into a press screening for a big movie down here to save my life. But that's okay, because I also think there's something a little more honest about reviews when I had to pay for it.
Yeah, and also having the right crowd. You have a jaded crowd with some of those press screenings. We have people that intrinsically are saying, you know what, I want to have it come from my point of view, and I already have this idea built in my head, versus having a real audience, to have them react and to see them. I had a wonderful audience last night, and it just
which theater did you go to?
At the brand new Alamo
Draft House in San Jose at the Valley Fair.
Yep, Valley Fair. They took over the Icon cinemas that were there, and they built out the theater was 287 seats with an upstairs and a downstairs, and it was fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, I saw it at AMC Burbank, which has the Jim Lee Batman statue outside. And hot tip, we're about to get Scum and Villainy. Cantina is either opening a second location or is moving out of Hollywood into Burbank and into right by the theater. So I'm so thrilled because I hang out there all the time anyway. But yeah, I saw it at the IMAX, and it was so good. My wife and I really aren't big like IMAX fans, but I said, it's Superman, I got to do it. And she was glad that we'd gotten the IMAX tickets, because it was an audience, yes, full of people wearing the Superman capes because they were giving out capes. And I don't know if you got one, but that was cool to see all these people. But more importantly, I saw a San Jose filmmaker, and I was staring at him before the movie started, going, I know that guy. And his name, Michael D. Lynch. He won't be embarrassed that I said it, because he was a good fit.
He's the one with the son, with his son there.
And I'm staring and I'm going, like, it's so cool to see this kid, to see all these kids in Superman cosplay. There were a few adults too. A young lady dressed as Booster Gold, which I just loved seeing that. So it was definitely among the fans. So that's my only caveat on this film, is I saw it surrounded by people that know it. And as somebody asked me today, what do you think? And I said, it's great. I just want to know what regular people think about it, because what I loved, I resisted. And it was always a joke between my wife and me. I resisted explaining every little continuity reference and thing to her until we got home, at least a nice, good ride home. It's like there was so much, like every era of Superman gets a nod somewhere in there. And yet it is its own thing, but it's still pulling. In some ways, the plot is echoing, let's call it that, echoing or rhyming Superman the movie. Because there are things where I went, oh yeah. And not just because Miss Tessmacher is there, but yes, Miss Tessmacher is there, a character created specifically for the 78 film. But I loved that it's, a coworker asked me today, and I said, it's clearly chapter 1. Creature Commandos was awesome, but it's not really chapter. It's more like a prelude to Gods and Monsters. But if this is chapter 1, it doesn't matter if this is the only one you want to see. It was fun. It stands on its own. And I can see things that are sprinkled down for this is where it's going to go. But I'm going to be the completist and see it. Not everybody has to be.
You go back a little bit, you mentioned Creature Commandos. one of the things I loved about that is the ability to imbue so much character story, like GI, what's his name?
GI Robot, yeah.
Yeah, GI Robot's character. I had no expectation that I would be tearing up watching an episode about GI Robot and everything he went through and all that. And that was such a prelude, and like you had mentioned, that it kind of, this is the setup. We're going to have heart and we're going to have hope. We're also going to have a different sensibility. And that was one of the hardest things about watching something like Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman, is the fact that you could have it could have been Batman in a Superman suit because of the style and the direction and the way the script was. It was a very dark directive and lack of hope. Also, I really hate the fact that how do you go from working on a fishing trawler to being a reporter in a great newspaper? But I don't want to talk about that. I understand it was the script, it was the way it was laid out. But this script felt very purposely hopeful, and it offered something that I think we need. And it felt the same way going back. I can tell you that Superman came out about 3 months with Christopher Reeve, came out about 3 months before I met my wife. And so we've been together a very long time. And I saw that movie way, way too many times at the theater. I used to do this parlor trick. I'd bring people to the theater. I would face them, the screen behind me, and I would tell them all the credits as they're coming. This, okay, Roland Brando.
But and can I say, what I also loved was the credits, the title sequence was an echo of Superman the movie. It was an homage. And just enough of John Williams' theme. These were the things that this is done with so much love. And I'm not a Snyder bro, pro or con. Although I think guys let it go. This is what happens. You get reboots. I don't think that Zack Snyder read all the same comic books that we did. I think he read The Dark Knight Returns. I think he probably read Red Sun. And I don't know, because I don't know what he claims. But it was a much darker take than, and at the time when I saw Man of Steel, it's like, I know I see some things that I really like about it. But this was, I love that you're right in the middle of it, because you said it's a new take. It's all the thing, but it's also, it's not just about hope. We're open to the weird, because one of the criticisms that I saw from the trailer, somebody complaining is like, he's letting Solaris just be in the background. He and Lois are kissing while this monster's in the background. But in context, it's just, oh, that's just another problem. And there are other heroes.
There are people on it. There are people on it.
Yeah.
You look at all the things like Guy Gardner. My wife first said, I just hate the way he looks. I go, he's perfect. He is canon. That is. And she goes, but he's not likable. I go, he wasn't in any comic I've ever read. He's never been likable. And so this is who he is. So Nathan just did such a great job with that. But the standout thing was not just the individual characters, the fact that they played you this large symphony in these little vignettes. Yes. You followed one person, then you followed the next one. I liked the way it flowed. And I thought that it delivered some really dynamic performances that I didn't expect. I had no expectation to walk away becoming this gigantic Mr. Terrific fan. Not to that degree.
No, he was perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And at the same time, for anybody who hasn't read him, because I saw somebody post like, I want to read all the comics. I'm like, they're not all that good.
No.
He's a character who works best in the context that the movie put him in, because his origins in an issue of The Spectre by John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake, which is, they're releasing the omnibus, I think, in November. And absolutely people should read it. It's a fantastic story, because out of context, why is this guy wearing this jacket and saying fair play and terrific on the back? It seems very egotistical, but even again, James Gunn set up the possibility that we're going to see Terry Sloan, or at least understand that Terry Sloan might have been there, because there have been metahumans for 300 years. And out of the gate.
But you're laying that out, but you're acknowledging that right from the beginning. And I think that was I know that James Gunn had talked about the fact that, and I've said this for years, you know what? I don't need to know that these 4 people were in a capsule, a rocket into space, and they were hit by cosmic rays. I don't need to see another spider bite any Peter, anybody. I don't need to see anything happen in Crime Alley ever again. We know that she buys it. We know that the father dies. We know that he becomes Batman. And to be able to start with that, it's like we saw another movie in the title sequence in the first, 90 seconds, just by reading all that. I'm like, okay, I got that. And for those of us that were real fans, we were happy. And I think it was enough information for anybody who is a casual observer, a casual fan, that they could catch up. So let me ask you, in addition to Mr. Terrific being a standout performer, I know you have a puppy. And what were your thoughts about Crypto's introduction?
Yeah, I don't know where my dog-friendly screening will be. I guess it has to be when I get the Steelbook and watch it. Because I'll tell you also, the only thing that my puppy, he's over a year old, almost 2 years old now, the only thing on television that has held his attention was when they released the extended trailer with just all the extra crypto stuff. And he just stared at that TV and watched that. Nothing else has caught. He'll look up and go back to sleep or whatever. That caught him. Not even Puppy Bowl did it for him. It's crypto. It is interesting how that hit differently, because the other backstory pieces, I have been adjacent to a few dogs in my lifetime, but I've never owned one, if you will, been the one responsible. And so this is essentially my first dog, and how much the last year has meant and changed. And when James, and I know James was a big dog lover, Von Spears, I remember following and seeing his posts about his dog, late dog there. It just, I knew who Crypto was. I don't think my wife even knew about Crypto, and she certainly hadn't watched the Dwayne Johnson voiced animated movie. And I did, but I just thought it was so thrilling to see him, and then so real. Like, I do get started. What do you do with an invulnerable dog who will not accept training very well? He's not well behaved, but you can still see the love and the frustration. And it was a very real human or Superman Crypto relationship that is more idealized in the comics. So I love that this was a more realistic one.
That
despite the fact
that made a really big difference, but also was those moments that were these hero moments that you don't expect. The hero moment comes from Crypto toys, him going after those things. It's just a dog doing what he likes doing best and having a good time and being a real puppy.
Well, we went through we went to training with ours, and our trainer says something that I thought was, I think the more time I spent with my Waldo, the more I think, yeah, this is true. They want to be good, if you will. They have instincts. And so that wanting to be good fights their instincts all the time. And that's why you have to reinforce the training, et cetera. And so, yeah, that's what it felt, because clearly there are moments he will listen. But he just wants to have fun. And I don't want to, I want to try to be as spoiler free for people watching. Sure. But you know what, other things that I loved were like the parallel casting of parents. The Kryptonians, I wish I didn't know who had been cast as Jor-El and Lara before going in. But there's let's just say, they're very movie star. And then the Kents, for the very first time, are not hot people. They're real Midwesterners. They're real Midwesterners. There's a touch. Martha Kent does not really handle modern technologies super well. And I laughed, and I was like, oh no, that's probably perfect. So who cares that her son is Superman? Doesn't mean she learned how to use Wi-Fi perfectly.
Now, the other side of it, though, is I will, in defense of the Christopher Reeve film, is the fact that Glenn Ford and Phyllis Thatcher, I think, was they were the mom. I thought they were quite good, and I thought that that same sensibility of being earnest Midwestern down home people, I love that, and I think that was that. But you're right; these were not like idealized, super hot people. They were mom and dad,
because a whole generation's grown up with. They saw Smallville. They got John Schneider and Annette O'Toole, objectively hot people. You got in Man of Steel, Kevin Costner and Diane Lane, objectively hot people. And here you've got Mom, Pa Kent that are a little out of shape, but they're good. And I thought even they were implying like that Jonathan might be a slow thinker. or a slow talk, that he might have a stutter or something, that it was just like, oh, from that is an empathy. Maybe. I don't know. Because there are a couple things where I was like, did they do this on purpose? There's a thing Guy Gardner says where I asked my wife and I asked a friend who had been the night before, and it's, do you think that what Guy Gardner says, again, not to be a spoiler, but about Superman's secret identity is true, or something Clark just told Guy because it was funny that Guy would believe it?
I've had that conversation already, and I am certain he said it so Guy would leave him alone.
Yes. And I love that. And it's not signposted.
No, not at all.
But it's a great moment, and that's what it's so well characterized. Here, to compare with Zack Snyder's vision, those movies are operas. They're huge, they're opera, they're big, and they're world-shaking. And though this is a world-shaking film in Superman, the moments are all small and human. This is one of the threats Lex Luthor makes when Superman's with Metamorpho, right? Is just so like, it called right back, even though it's not a direct echo, it calls right back to my favorite Christopher Reeve moment. Ooh, it always makes me choke up. In Superman 2, when Zod, when the three Kryptonian villains are threatening Metropolis, and Zod's about to, like, I think, throw a bus, and Superman has to stop fighting and says, you can't. The people. And that's what it felt like.
Yeah. It's not only that, it's the fact that it's such a weird thing to say, but Superman is so human. He's almost more human. The humanistic characteristics, the way he presents himself, the way he is, he's so thoughtful. He is his dad's son. You know, and I see that. And you see...
He's Jonathan's son, 100%.
Exactly. And because of that, and his mom, and between the two of them, they raised him well. And in the comic books, the biggest probably negative about Superman and for years, one of the biggest stumbling blocks for a lot of writers was the fact they always said, here, he's a Boy Scout. He's going to always be a Boy Scout. No, intrinsically, he is somebody who's decent. And that's completely different from just being a Boy Scout. He doesn't just always do the right thing. He does things for the right reasons, which is another thing altogether. And I thought the way that they showed not just the individual characters, but motivations for some of the characters, like this was probably the most envious, evil Lex we've ever seen. And like my favorite Lex is still the animated series.
Clancy Brown. Clancy's terrific. Yeah. But I love Nicholas Hoult because for 2025,
that's the right
that
one.
is Lex Luthor. That is the Lex
Luthor. It's a combination of the tech bro. It's a combination of being a billionaire and never being told no. It's a combination of him having a level of envy that he can control and go after him and say, I don't like this guy for whatever reason, and have all these people working with him. I did notice, you did notice there was an Otis in there working for him.
Yes. No, I love that. That's it. There's even, I don't want to call out where, but that's, I mean, how deep cuts this thing goes. There's even essentially a reference to the Superman is a Dick website. I was like, again, a joke that I waited till we were home. We'd taken Waldo out for a walk, and I said, okay, this is my favorite. I can't believe they acknowledged that in a way that no one else would see and prove that he hates the idea that someone would think he might be a dick. And I love that. So decent, so good. And yeah.
So the other thing that is interesting for me was the way they built the physical costuming and the characters and to make them look so comic book accurate and that fearlessness. And I think we learned that with like Rocket and with Groot and with all the things with Guardians, where they weren't afraid of, let's make them look like they should look. And so when you see Metamorpho for the first time, I was shocked to see Rex and to see how good he looked and how it felt like it was popping off the page. And Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner and Hot Girl. Everybody looked
let us give credit to Beck Bennett as Steve Lombard. Where I'm convinced there's a lot of Daily Planet footage that has to be on the cutting room floor. Because, again, my wife asked me, like, who was that? Who were all those other reporters? And yes, let's make the joke that everybody will. This the most unbelievable part of this movie is that the Daily Planet is actually doing its job as a journalistic reportage exposing evil. But that Beck Bennett was Steve Lombard's there, and you just see these little glimpses of him. And I said, well, that's the sports reporter. So if you know that, it's funny that he's included.
Right.
But it's not really explicit in the movie. And then I had to explain who Ron Troop was and Cat Grant. Their characterizations were very clearly done, but who they were in the context of the movie was like, you had to know. So,
it's almost one of those things where you would almost need that Daily Planet TV show in order to really explore them, because it's, in a lot of ways, it's just not fair in the concise number of minutes that we have in a film.
It was about 2 hours, which was perfect. It just went.
It did. I wanted more. I was waiting for more.
Yeah, I'm finally willing to sit through 3 hours of a superhero movie, and then they don't give it to me.
Sure. You're waiting for Titanic 2, Electric Boogaloo. So
I am not.
But I'm sure there's scenes of him bouncing around that ship and a bunch of other stuff, but also just the basic thing that we're so used to, which is Steve Lombard being a jerk to Clark.
Yeah, no, and I'm fine with that. I just think I'm sure that there's going to be these great deleted scenes on that physical media. Yeah, but it was a short. I also loved that I like Skylar Gisondo as an actor anyway, but that is the weird Jimmy Olsen energy of the comics that I've been reading for 40, 50 years, 55, that Jack Larson was the Jeepers, Mr. Canton, never really, other than that Superman's best pal, weird energy. Every other version has been okay, but this is the one that captured it. It's like, there's clearly something magnetic about Jimmy. Gizondo's an interesting actor because he looks old to be a teenager, but too young to be an adult. So he's like that perfect image of what Jimmy Olsen is, that can be used for humor, but when the chips are down, is a hero in his own right.
I think that's the thing, is that, again, you get back to anybody that reads the comics. You think about the fact that he's the guy that has the Superman, the signaling device. He's the guy who is there to support him. He's even gotten to Kandor. You just have this list of things that Jimmy has done, and he's been there. And he's also, oh God, who was he? Elastic Lad, also Giant Turtle Boy. Silly things have happened there, and that's what I mean. And of course, because they included Peacemaker. Oh, sorry, but it's just a little cameo of Peacemaker to acknowledge all the weirdness. Right, all of it is there, and so I saw somebody excited, like, James Gunn seems open to Batmite. I'm like, he mentioned Batmite in season 1 of Peacemaker. Yes, we're going to see Batmite. Yes, we're going to see Mixes Matolik, who will be accurate. That's it. I think that James has the courage, and Marvel started doing it too. So I don't want to say it's just James, although it was James doing it, right, with Rocket and Groot. We're on like generation 3 of kids who have grown up watching these cartoons and understanding all this backstory and saying, this is what they dress. We're not in 2000 with X-Men saying they got to wear black leather because no one will believe them in the yellow and blue. And it's like, are you kidding? There's no other way for this to make sense. I remember vividly going on a junket when the DVD for X-Men came out with Bill Hunt and his friends in LA, going to the studio and meeting Bryan Singer and a bunch of other people there about the suits and how much they wanted to do like comic book, but nobody would buy it. There was not, and to finally see Wolverine and Deadpool and Wolverine actually see that suit was eye-opening. It felt really good. I didn't even realize how much I wanted it until I saw it. That was a level of vindication. It felt, okay, now all of a sudden we're the backbone of these films. Even though the rest of the world gets to jump in and they get to enjoy them, the people that have been here and never left, we're the core of this. And throw us a bone. And James Gunn has no problem saying, this is what it's all about. And let me show you the weird, strange world. Because if the man can fly and a girl can have wings, then anything's possible. And then you have a dog that can do whatever the hell he wants. Yeah. And also, it's not even Superman's dog. We're not talking about that. It's a foster situation. It works. I got to say, casting-wise, chemistry.
First time in a long time that I believed that Lois and Clark were, to be fair, the TV show Superman and Lois did a pretty good job. I like Tyler Hoechlin, and I can't remember her name offhand. Mitzi Tulloch. I really like them, and I think they're good in the role. But I believe this relationship, that it's early in their romance, but that it's strong.
Right.
And it's got realistic problems that would come with one of the world's best reporters and Superman. Okay, there's going to be some problems because they've got integrity as reporters too. And I know that was the cynical joke I made earlier, but it's nice to believe that. I want to believe, I know there are plenty of really good journalists working. I just think it's really the ownership right now that is problematic.
I understand. Yeah, that makes sense. And I really did appreciate Smallville's, version of it as it went into later seasons.
Yeah.
And the way they worked together, because it felt like there was a nurturing relationship. They built on something. And what I felt is by the end of this film in particular, I'm like, okay, there's something special here. And I really appreciate it because also we're so used to Lois not just not doing much, but being complementary to some of the issues and some of the problems. There's usually this weird instigator or catalyst of something negative that happens, and Superman has to save her. But as we got into comics over the years, Lois was a really smart, aggressive reporter. She knew what she was doing. She ended up saving people more than once. And again, you go back to a lot of stuff from All-Star Comics or All-Star Superman, and where a lot of this comes from.
And this was really is like the energy of Danny Delaney in Superman the Animated Series.
Oh yeah,
give me a Lois Lane that I can believe Superman would say, yeah, that's the one I'm going to devote the rest of my life to. He's not going to. It's got to be someone really dynamic and dynamite, and she is, and I love that.
Yeah, I thought her portrayal was incredible, and I really, not just did I enjoy it, I saw so much nuance throughout the entire thing. There were some thoughtful moments, and that whole interplay in the very beginning of the film I thought was lovely, and I think people really enjoy that because I think it sets our view of this really dynamic relationship, and we're going to see something grow. And so I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about the fact that we have not just Lois, but Superman, the two of them. David Corenswet when I first saw him, I'll be honest with you, the first thing I really paid attention to him was in Twisters, and he has 9 lines.
Which I haven't seen it yet, but I saw Pearl.
He's behind a couple other people in it. He says a couple things, and I just looked at him and I said, no, I don't see it in any way, shape, or form. And over, not just through the previews and everything else, but seeing behind the scenes footage and everything else, the way he's presented, it feels very much like the way Christopher Reeve took the mantle and said, I am going to have to do this, and I have to be this off screen as well as on screen. I have to do more.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great comparison. Now, again, I've respected most of the actors who have played Superman. But I didn't lose Henry Cavill in the role. I don't blame Henry Cavill for that. I just think
I don't either.
It's written, it was directed, etc. We'd seen him as other things. But when Christopher Reeve died, again, I'll get personal. My first marriage was not in a great place at that point. But my first wife came out. She heard the news before I did. I was working at the kitchen table, and she came out and hugged me and said, Christopher Reeve just died. Because she knew.
Right.
And I don't even know why that destroyed me so much, because he hadn't been Superman in forever. And so it's just, but he was Superman, just like Christopher Evans. Chris Evans is Captain America. And for better or worse, Margot Robbie is Harley Quinn. Others are good.
Right.
They're not her. Corenswet just might be able to rise into a whole mantle. Superman for a whole new generation, because they have every right to have theirs, but to really believe him as that. And but I'll say I saw him in Pearl, and he was also in that. There was a Netflix series, I think, Hollywood. That one didn't stand out for me, but in Pearl, I was like, I wonder if that guy, he'd be a good Superman. I swear, I saw it was like a year before he was announced in the role, and I just thought, yeah, there's something, even though he's not particularly noble in that movie. There was just an energy he had. I like Brandon Routh too. He was another one by a not perfect
But I will put up the scene where he saves that airplane against any Superman scene, period, because that's such a dynamic scene with the special effects the way it is, and still flying is still the safest way to fly. The whole thing, the whole
Yeah,
scene.
no, it's
That
great.
sequence is phenomenal.
But
But
even that James Gunn did a lot of that lifting too. A lot of
yeah,
stuff that was echoing back to Superman Returns.
I,
It's
I,
all there. It's a
and Action
Silver
Cop,
Age feel, but Action Comics. It's, you see that, and choked me up every time with that, which has been in the trailer of him saving that little girl. And there's a
yeah,
moment again that reminds, as you go, the contrasting characters without even. He has a speech near the end where it had to be on the nose. It had to be because people
sure.
in the back row need to hear it and need to understand it. But the thing again was in the trailer, mostly in the trailer, where the Justice Gang, the toys spoiled that one, so we're not spoiling anything.
Wow, I know,
But
right?
yeah, but the Justice Gang and he team up to fight somebody, and the difference is Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl are looking for the adulation, and
And Superman
he's
is,
checking to make sure the kids are okay.
and they're running over to him. It is such a big difference, and I can tell you exactly why that moment happened years ago with you and Christopher Reeve, because it happened to me. And he meant so much to me for a lot of reasons, but also when he had his accident and everything happened, we all felt like, wait a second, this is such a terrible thing to happen to him, but he's going to overcome it. And
He's going to overcome it, and that is why I cried, because I believed he would.
Yeah, I did too.
And it, terrifyingly, I had a student a few years later, who had been there. She was at that horse show. She watched it happen. A little girl, and she said, "Yeah, that was a devastating moment." And I didn't even know why everybody around me was so horrified. But now I get it, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. But again, he filled that role. Corin Sweat filled that. I chat with a friend this morning, because of course everybody's chatting with me about it today, right? Anthony Kerrigan as Metamorpho that's not the Rex Mason from the comics, but I love that Metamorpho's there, that Metamorpho looks like Metamorpho and acts, his powers work like Metamorpho. His personality is just not the swaggering soldier of fortune. But I get it. In 2025, how many soldiers of fortune have you seen in the last 40, 50 years of movies?
But wait a second, take it back a little bit. Part of that whole thing is the fact I don't think we have time.
No, really, I know, but we see a very sensitive Rex Mason, which is different. And so I'm not criticizing that.
I'm not saying you are. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that in the film itself, there's something that he is fighting against that he has zero control over, and he feels beaten down and lost, and he's trying to hold it together. So I understand that version of him. We saw somebody at their most vulnerable.
And yeah, so no, thank you. You've talked me to having no problem now. Plus I love Anthony Kerrigan. I hope he's as nice as he seems to be. And that's one I have no encounter with. I was on a dance floor with Nathan Fillion once, so I can say he's got moves. That's all I can say about Nathan Fillion.
Oh, there you go.
But I think what we're getting at is, if you're a fan of comics, it's just amazing. We're never going to get all the story we want because there's just no time. And no one's going to, if anybody's crazy enough to say, let's do a Metamorpho miniseries, it will be James Gunn. But it's Mr. Terrific. I want to see a Justice League movie because I don't know that Mr. Terrific could carry. I'd be interested in a character who prides himself on not being emotional, even though he clearly is, because everybody always is, even when they say they're not. But I want Mr. Terrific to be in every damn one of these movies. Because whoever they cast as Batman and Brave and the Bold, you put that Mr. Terrific against anybody's vision of Batman. Fascinating.
Yeah. Look, I want to see a satellite, Justice League satellite, 23,000 miles in the sky. I want to see Jean Johns. I want to see everybody. I do want to see all that. And I think that we have, I can walk away from this film with a couple of things. Ultimately, it's about promise. We are going to get things that we never thought we were going to see before. And I know James Gunn has a couple of different crazy ideas. And I know the things that he's working on right now and some of the other things that we don't know about. I think we're going to see some things, because if Guardians told us anything, he told us that he can tell a story and make you believe not just in a tree that loves his family, but in a raccoon that is the deadliest fighter in the world or in the cosmos, as well as one of the most heartfelt and deep feeling friends ever. Whether it was Flora and all those other characters and how that made me feel,
Yeah.
which was devastating to me. James Gunn has that ability to kind of play both sides of that, the fun energy and also the heartfelt emotion. And I did feel like we walked away from something special here. And you said early on, is this a masterpiece? It's too early to tell. It is too early to tell. I do know that I will see it at least once, if not 3 times this weekend. I know that. I don't have a choice.
I'm tempted. It's harder with a dog. And we got all kinds of other things going, but so I rarely see a movie in a theater twice. It's just that's the way the world works for me. In fact,
Sure.
I'm rarely seeing a movie. But because the damn popcorn buckets differ for each chain of movie theaters you go to.
They do.
I think I might be trying to find a Cinemark or a Regal this weekend to see what popcorn bucket I could get. And I don't buy the popcorn buckets anymore. But I bought the one.
Did you see the crypto bucket?
I know of it. I saw photos.
Oh.
So went to AMC. So we got the newspaper stand with it reverses. So the newspaper facing out when you buy it is Superman, but it flips around to crypto.
Okay.
So we flipped it around to crypto because we could not walk in having cheated on our dog by going away without something that had a dog on it. But yeah, we got to see. You got to get the crypto buckets. I don't know which one Alamo Draft House had, but it annoys me that I have to, because I haven't bought a popcorn bucket in at least a decade, and so it's like I have to.
This reminds me of going to a midnight movie. This reminds me of going and seeing a movie with a bunch of friends and having everybody want to talk about it afterwards. I've never had more people like text me or call me just to say, "Did you see it? What do you think?" Blah, blah, blah. Like having a real hunger for that conversation to extend the feeling of the experience, because I think this harkens back to those moments. There's so many magical movies that are quintessential, that mean so much. I remember walking out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind with my then girlfriend. We walked out, who is now my wife, same lady. She's always been the same lady. And we walked outside.
And she's nice. I've met her. She's very nice.
She's okay. But we walk outside and we looked up and we just stared at the sky for half an hour. I remember that. I will never forget that. And there's certain films that create this thing where we're connected in a weird, strange way that we're not even sure about. And I know this film is going to have elements of that just because it allowed us to be as geeky as we want to be, but there was enough stuff there for somebody who was a casual observer who doesn't have the history, that doesn't know. And like I said, the first thing, I had somebody tell me, I feel like it's campy. And I start laughing. I go, you're talking about Guy Gardner, aren't you? And they're like, absolutely. They zoned directly on that weird haircut. What was all that about? I go, he was perfection.
And wait till you see him in contrast with the rest of the core, which we're going to get next year on HBO Max.
And he's in there. And he's in that too.
And Peacemaker as well. This is the feeling. I think I had a work dinner recently where someone said, what's the movie that if it's on TV and you flip past it, you have to stop and watch to the end? And I said, first of all, honestly, that never happens anymore. Who's flipping through channels? But it's because we're all the same age. And you're like, we remember that. But this is one where I think that if I were in that situation, anytime it was on TV, if I was still in that's how we're slaves to the schedule of a network, I would be watching it. I would be going, oh, we're going to make time and finish this. Or I could drop in for a scene and go, that was so good. That was so satisfying. But you're right. As a masterpiece, I go, it's almost like it's not fair to write a review when a movie first comes out. It's like, how do I feel about it 6 months from now? And I really appreciate the chance to have this conversation because you're not the only person that's asked me or offered to let me offer my thoughts. And I do want to write a review, but I also wanted to talk it out with people before I wrote something because I know I love it, but how to articulate it in words that don't spoil it, because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But I just wanted to be able to. I want to tout it.
It wasn't for me. It wasn't even that. It was the idea that I haven't been this excited about a film. And now I'm very excited about Fantastic Four. I'm very excited about some of the other films that are coming out. But this movie, I remember seeing Christopher Reeve's film, the first film, over and over again, and remember how it felt. I do remember that was so vivid. And back in the old days, back in the olden times, you would buy a ticket in the morning for an early show during the summer. And if you didn't cause trouble and you cleaned up after yourself, you didn't have to leave the theater. So I would sit there, the next show would start, and I'd watch it again, and then I'd watch it again. And I was picking apart. One time I would just listen to it for the music. One time I would just watch the special effects. And that was my film school initially. That was the thing that really
I'm going to throw one other thing about writing, because I'm in the midst of doing some more fiction work and comics work. But James Gunn released playlists for the characters. And I'm really going to have to start experimenting with that. And I know you've been in the same boat. You've been on a lot of different sides of production and entertainment. As an actor, I've always said that I don't feel like I find a character until I know how they laugh. James Gunn, as a writer, I don't think finds a character until he knows what music they listen to. And I find that absolutely fascinating. So you make a good point. It made me feel like 1978 again. I'm a few years younger. My cousin and I saw it. We were the last. We bought the tickets way too late. So we were in the front row. I think it was called the Hammer Theater in Stockton. Front row. So super tall. My neck hurt afterwards. But then seeing it in IMAX last night was like, yeah, they feel 100 feet tall again. And the heroes that are bigger than life and yet life-sized. And so I love it. And I have to run, but I know we've talked about like connecting up and doing a podcast at some point. I'm glad this could be the first of, I hope, a few conversations about nerdiness, since you're
absolutely
NorCal, and
yeah, anytime that you want to get together, let's have a conversation. I will tell you that we should go out to the next Mighty Crabjoy concert and enjoy ourselves.
Absolutely. I will be there.
Thanks again for watching this episode, and please consider checking out the cinemas this summer. Now, we do appreciate you watching, listening, and being part of Sci-Fi Fandom. So until we meet again, remember, never be cruel, never be cowardly, always try to be nice, and never fail to be kind. I'm Sinohui, and until then, be seeing you.